In this short video, we will give you an introduction into CIVICA's CITO EDRMS. On the home screen, where we are at the moment, is a collection of what we call widgets. These widgets can be organized in a patient view to show patient lists. These can be provided by ward, for example, or by specialty, and also filtered by a consultant code, for example. Also on my widget home screen view, I also have the ability to use a messaging widget, which can be used for messages received from the system and also other colleagues, as well as work lists and tasks lists as well. This allows me to organize workflows, for example, that may be coming in for an action that I need to carry out as part of a pathway of care, or maybe as part of retention and disposal. At the top banner here, I can search for additional patients. So if I search for a new patient called Green, we can see here we get a number of results for patients with the surname Green, and I can use a number of different metadata to qualify the right patient. It could be a mixture of surname and forename, as well as maybe a date of birth or a primary metadata such as an NHS number or a hospital number. At the options at the top here, I also have the ability to potentially carry out other functions such as designing eForms or designing workflows, or maybe the ability to view the audit. This will depend on my role rights that have been assigned to me by the system administrator. If we go into a patient's record, and again, depending on whether we have a widget home screen set up for potentially a clinic for today's patients, for example, if I go and click on Rachel Middleford's record, it's one click to get into that patient's record. And for consultants to find and easy navigate patient records, that's extremely important to know that you only have to use one click to get into that patient's record. We also have the ability to display alerts within the system. Now this may show things like known allergies, for example, but also whether someone is involved in maybe a clinical trial. I must confirm that I've read these alerts before I can proceed to continue to the patient's record. Once we're inside the patient's record, we'll just talk a little bit about the functionality we're now seeing on this screen. On the top bar here, I can obviously go and search for another patient if I want to look for another patient that may not be in a list on my home screen. But because I'm in a patient context, I can now also search for content within this patient's record. Under options, again, because we're in a patient context, my options have now changed, and I can now, for instance, start an eForm. I may be able to acquire an attachment, and it's worth pointing out at this point that if I am using CITO on a tablet device that may have a camera inbuilt, for example, I can actually attach information directly to the patient record using that tablet's camera. I may also have the ability to publish attachments. This is quite useful for subject access requests, for example, where I need to publish an entire patient record and all the information that's held within CITO around this particular patient. Next, we have our ISB compliant patient banner, which allows us to see all the key information and metadata that we hold around that patient. This could include address information, contact information, other information such as primary and secondary identifiers, as well as upcoming appointments, and any known alerts or allergies. Next, we have our attachment preview reel. This is a first page preview of every type of attachment that has been added to this patient's record. So we can see here it's very easy to start identifying the types of attachments that we have against this particular patient's record. We can see clearly there we have some medical photography. We may have certain types of anesthetic records, and we can also see that we have some legacy information here as well. At the moment, we're currently viewing the patient's record in a patient event-driven view, and that allows us to take additional clinical information and appointment data from the HL7 messages provided by the Trust's existing PAS or EPR to overlay patient event-driven data over the attachments and the captured records within the system. So for example, we can see we have an outpatient stay here, and if I click on the little I above the patient banner, we can see the actual notification messages that were sent to us. This is extremely useful because it allows us to see all the information about the patient's visit for this particular episode without having to necessarily dive into specific documentation. You will also see at the top of this particular attachment preview reel we have our points of interest markers. These are denoted by the exclamation marks in different colours that you can see here. So these may be our bookmarks or annotations, or also any keywords or phrases that we have asked the system to pick up and notify us of any existence within this particular patient record. Now these bookmarks, annotations and dynamic tagging can be set up by ourselves, or they can be set up by other users and then shared with us directly in what we call our profiles. We also have color coding, which can be seen underneath each attachment, and this may relate to the color coding of a particular category that has been set up within the system. On this example, we're showing a day forward record and also a legacy style record as well, showing the various dividers that may have existed in physical format that have now been changed into virtual folders. If I click anywhere in the attachment preview reel at the top, you'll see my timeline view has also highlighted the document that I'm currently viewing. If I scroll across and select another type of attachment, you'll see now we're now showing that in the timeline view in the far right. So let's have a look at a particular attachment. We'll pick on this pathology report that's currently being captured under investigations on the 1st of May 2016. If I select my icon on the left hand side to view the attachment, we then get a nice full page view of that particular attachment that was stored against the medical record. It's very easy for me to scroll up and down, and I can also select a film strip view, which will allow me to navigate the record in its entirety, depending on the role rights that I have to view the medical record, to easily find the information that I may be looking for over and above the initial document that I have selected. It's also extremely easy for me to compare information side by side. Using this pin on the top right hand corner, I can simply click on that and then get a second viewing pane. This allows me then to traverse the medical record through to maybe a different type of attachment and compare information side by side. I can then zoom in on this information if I want to. So this is extremely useful for comparing maybe ECGs or other types of charts, for example. But I can also pin these so that I can scroll synchronously between two different documents. Again, very useful if I want to scroll through a multiple page document and compare it with another multiple page document. Simply clicking the X there allows me to take me back to my last viewed bit of information. We'll see here that pathology report has actually been highlighted. Now the reason it's been highlighted, and as we can see here it's also marked with a point of interest, is that because I have set up a dynamic tag for pathology report under my dynamic tagging profile. And this is an example of how keywords or medical phrases can be used to easily highlight a part of a record as soon as I enter the record, so that I know there is some key bits of information that are important to me and that I can quickly and easily navigate to those particular marked documents. I also have the ability to go into a full screen mode by clicking on the little full screen icon on the left hand side. This maximizes my real estate, so it's very easy for me to then view the additional documents within that pane. As mentioned previously, CITO has the ability to dynamically tag and highlight keywords or phrases that I may have asked the system to find automatically when I'm traversing a patient's record. But I also have the ability to do an ad hoc search as well. Let's search for the term blood, and we'll get a Google style results pane showing us all the hits for the word blood in various documentation throughout this patient's record. We also get to see a Google style results pane which will show us around about 10 words of context either side of the result, And that's really important because that allows me to see the information and the context around the words that I've asked to be found. If we want to filter our results a little bit more, we can search for multiple phrases. So let's search for the word blood and oxygen. So now we've only got 5 results that have met our criteria. And again, I can view the context around those results and select the page that might be of importance or relevance to me. I can hit apply filter, and we can see we've only being shown now one particular anaesthetic record. And if I use the points of interest button on the control pane at the bottom, I'm taken to the very first result for oxygen, and then we also have blood there as well. So that's extremely useful for being able to search very quickly across all the patient record data that we are holding in CITO for this particular patient. CITO also allows for the ingestion of information from third-party systems, such as other clinical core systems, with the ability to also launch into these systems in third-party with or without a patient context. An example of this might be that pathology report that we are currently viewing. If I simply click on the attachment preview reel at the top, then we have a new option here, for example, called View in Native App. So this pathology report may have come from that third-party clinical system, such as maybe ICE pathology or radiology, and we may have additional information that we need to view that can't be communicated to CITO and is actually being kept in the source system, such as ICE, for example. So with the help of the third party and some integration capability, what we're able to do is view in native app. I can click here, and this will launch maybe ICE straight into that particular patient's context, and then showing additional results that may have been stored in the system. I can also get to third-party applications using the link icon on the left-hand side of the CITO user interface. Here I can configure various different integrations. This may be to existing EPRs or other prescribing systems, maybe even a DICOM image store. But also, very handily, I can configure additional links to go to third-party reference sites such as NHS NICE guidelines, for example, or maybe NHS choices. This allows me to launch directly from CITO and bring up NICE guidelines, for example, to help with any existing diagnosis of this particular patient. By utilizing the third-party integration capability that CITO offers, I'm able to build up a source of truth of this particular patient's record, bringing in from multiple third-party systems into one central repository so that I, as a clinician, can log in and view all pertinent information to this patient from a single unified view. We've so far shown you how to use CITO to access a digitized medical record, compare different types of information side by side, and also view additional third-party applications within CITO. We're now going to show you how to use eForms to enter additional information digitally to contribute to that new digital record. One of CITO's core deliverables is its eForms capability, which can easily be filled out either on a computer or a tablet device. So let's fill out one of these now. Let's assume that Rachel is pregnant and is coming in for one of her early pregnancy appointments. As a clinician, we know we need to go off and find this particular electronic eForm, so let's start by going to Options and Start an eForm. Now, as well as having the option at the top here to start an eForm, which is where we clicked, I also have the ability to go into my recently submitted forms or most frequently used forms from the left-hand side panel option here, and this option is displayed whenever I'm in a patient context, so I can go to it directly wherever I am within that patient's record and start an eForm directly. I could check my recently submitted forms to see if I've actually filled in this form before, But on this occasion I haven't, so we're going to search for the form manually. We can go to search for a form, and because of the way we index our eForms, I know that if I go to a particular specialty or category, I'll be able to find the form there. So we're going to go to our folder structure, and we're going to select our day forward record and charts and forms. And we can see here we have the early pregnancy medical record form displayed, so we can select it. I may have also actually chosen to go via specialties depending on how the trust is going to set up their medical record schema within CITO. So I could go to medical specialties, scroll down to obstetrics, and then go into notes. And there again my form would be displayed. Let's assume that we're going to capture this into the obstetrics specialty, so we're going to select and load this form. Our eForms can be tailored to the trust's exacting needs. This can include the trust logo and any specific form identifiers or types of information that are required for each of the forms that are created. CIVICA will be providing a pack of forms for the trust to utilise, but likewise those forms can also be further tailored by the trust once they've received some eForms design training. Our eForms can include all types of different elements. These include text boxes, drop-downs, date and time pickers, and option panels, as well as number spinners. We also have the ability to put in drawing boxes and other types of elements. The eForms can also be pre-populated with certain types of information. This can include patient identifiable information and also information about who is filling in the form and the date and time it may have been created or modified. There is also a new exciting feature coming in the later releases of CITO that will allow us to take information entered from one form and then put it into a new form as soon as it is created. This will remove the need for duplication when taking certain observations, for example, or wanting to review previous history. And we'll be happy to discuss that with you at a future date. With regards to this early pregnancy medical record form, let's go through and actually fill in some of the information that's been required. We can see here at the top that the consultant name has already been filled in for me and it's taken my demonstration username already. And we also have all of the patient identifiable information such as their unit or hospital number, their NHS number, their name, and also their date of birth and current age. If we scroll down to the admission details, we can fill these in as well. So we'll select today's date, which as date of recording is 15th. And we're seeing Rachel at 11 AM. We can select our referral source from the drop-down, and these drop-downs can be populated either by third-party sources such as external databases, or they can be simply typed in manually in terms of the eForm design to allow you to select exactly the information you require for each of these particular questions. So we're going to select referral source as GP, referral diagnosis as infertility, and admitting nurse as Pauline Daly. If we go down to the text box, we can fill in and do some free text narrative around the current contraception. So let's put in that we know that Rachel was taking combined pill for 6 years. Now you'll see there I've spelt years incorrectly. We've done that on purpose just to show you that we can check against a dictionary and spelling and grammar, so we can select the correct option that we were expecting there. We'll then go down to the BP and pulse, so we'll fill that in as a healthy 110 and over 70. With this number spinner, we've actually put in a range. So for example, if I go all the way up, we can't go past 100, and likewise I can't type in 200 because it will reset back to the maximum that is allowed. But we'll set it back to 80. Pulse is very much similar, so again the minimum value here is 40. We're just going to select that up to 55. And then the same for the temperature. We've been able to put a range in, so I'm just going to simply overtype that, and we're going to select 37.8. This particular eForm does have two different tabs, which could represent two physical pages of the original paper form. So I can simply traverse into that second page and carry on filling any other details. Let's enter in some information, so we'll just put in that a knee op in 2015, and we'll put current meds none. Allergies, we will simply put none for that, and we'll say no to having bloods taken. We could then add some more clinical narrative. And we're then ready to submit that particular form. And as we said earlier, we could save that as a draft in case we want to refer back to it before it's finally submitted, in which case it would show up in my draft section of completing a form for this particular patient. But if we're ready to, we can actually hit submit. We've then been taken back to the medical record and our newly submitted eForm that we've just created here on the 15th of November, which now forms the newest part of this particular episode for this patient. And we can see that all the information that we've entered has been captured, including the free text narrative, for example, and also the BP and pulse information that we submitted. If we carry on scrolling down, we get the second page as well, again with our medical and surgical history that we recorded, and the clinical notes that we put in as well. So this form's now been submitted, and other users of the system will be able to review that form depending on their permissions and role access to the particular patient or certain specialties or categories. And depending on whether this form's been submitted as a finalised form, we may not be able to make changes to it again. However, if it's been submitted as unfinalised, which means it's editable for the foreseeable future, I can simply go back to a form, select it, and go to Edit Form, which will allow me to go back into that form, whereby all the information that we've entered previously is still present, but I have the option to add and amend information. We can make types of information read-only after submission, therefore it couldn't be changed on a second edit. And we can also make certain fields required so that forms cannot be submitted unless those fields have been filled in. These mechanisms help to ensure the validity of these eForms and the data within them that's being submitted by our clinicians. So we've shown you how to submit and edit eForms that have been submitted via a computer. We're now going to show you how easy and simple it is to do the same thing on a tablet device. So we've now logged into our tablet device, and you can see on screen here we're onto the home screen again. And we have the same widget combination that we would have when we were logging into CITO via the computer. So we can simply go through our widget list and our clinics and select the appropriate patient. So we're going to go back into Rachel's record. If again there are any alerts or allergies, we need to accept those, but these can of course be turned off for the trust implementation. And we can see, thanks to the technologies that CITO has been built upon, that the screen is very usable even on a tablet device. We can scroll across the banner at the top to go through and see our medical record. So for example, if we go and have a look at the pathology results that we were looking at in the previous demonstration, again, very quick and easy to see that, and I can go full screen to bring that into our central view. But let's go back in specifically to fill in another eForm. So let's assume that we're going to have a second appointment with Rachel, and we're going to fill in another form for her. So we're going to go to Options, Start an eForm again. Now, because we've submitted that form earlier, it's now showing up in our recently submitted forms. So I don't have to go and actually search for that form anymore. I can easily find it off of the recently submitted forms list. So we'll select to create a completely new form. And you can see it's loaded up on screen nicely there. It's all fitting to the size of the iPad device that we're using. But because we're now using a different operating device and this tablet's running iOS, we have the ability to change the way that our elements are actually being interacted with on this device. So for example, when I select my drop downs now, we get a nice simple list to be able to select from, utilizing the inbuilt capability of the tablet itself. But one of the key fundamental differences when using a tablet device with an inbuilt microphone is I can now actually dictate directly into the eForm using the inbuilt microphone device. So let's do that now with the contraception text box. We can simply select to type into it and our keyboard will appear. But if we select the microphone icon, we can then dictate our narrative. Rachel has been taking the combined pill prescribed by her doctor for 6 years and stopped 6 months before becoming pregnant. Full stop. And we can see that's actually dictated rather nicely. It's formatted the words correctly, and we've been able to dictate that rather than type it. And again, that shows you just how easy it is to navigate through that form. I can go off to page 2 and have that load and show the information on page 2 to go through and access. So we can simply go through our tick boxes and check boxes and select what we need to say. And again, we can do some more clinical narrative around the clinical notes. This time we'll do some typing. And when we're ready, we can simply hit submit. And our second submitted form will now be displayed once it's been rendered. Once a form has been submitted, you can also do OCR searching in much the same way as we were showing you in the beginning of the video. So for example, we know we've submitted a form now that contains the word the pill. So we can select pill, hit search, and we're shown our 2 results that we've entered today on those 2 different forms. We can apply the filter and be shown the highlighted area where that particular piece of information is relevant. And if we zoom in, you can see it there much more clearly. Let's just reset our filter and go back to the normal view. Thank you for watching this short summary overview of CIVICA's CITO EDRMS. Please contact your account director for more information.